Welcome to Let's Ace Your List, all about list building. I'm your host, Leanne Pruitt. I am so excited to have my friend Anna Serena with us today. Anna, welcome.
Thank you so much, Leanne. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I am doing fabulous today. It's a beautiful day. We're here talking about one of my favorite topics, and it's just like, it couldn't get any better. So.
Nice.
Anyway, I want to tell you guys a little bit about Anna. She is just so cool. So you're going to love her as much as I do. She is a conversion copywriter and an email marketing strategist. She helps business owners and entrepreneurs craft an effective customer experience using copywriting and email strategy that results in higher engagement and sales. Now, and I want to just dig into that a little bit. It's like, you use a couple of different tools with your clients. Of course, you use the copywriting, but you also use kind of marketing and strategy work as well. So tell me, how did you get started doing what you're doing?
So interesting. That's a great question, Leanne. I started by way of publishing. So my first experience with copywriting was really in the copy editing and proofreading space. I did some freelancing, and then I was brought on by a publishing agency. And while I started out as their main editor, eventually I think they kind of realized, okay, she has a knack for marketing. Maybe we can transition her. And so I ended up handling most of the marketing for that brand. And I really loved it. I loved the copywriting piece. Mm-hmm. And so that's where that came from, by way of publishing, believe it or not.
So what kind of like books and things were you working on? I'm curious.
So it was a very small, it was a boutique agency. And so we were doing like memoirs. It was primarily memoirs, bios, that kind of a thing. Yeah.
So, and I would imagine in that, the editing, you had to be pretty detailed because it's like, were you checking facts and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yes. It was an interesting role too, because one of the projects I was brought on before the manuscript was finished. And so there was a lot of walking the author through what's okay to say. Yes, it's your personal story, but there's some things that we don't want to get into for potential defamation reasons. So it was a very interesting role for sure. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's cool. So now let me ask you this. How did you make the switch from doing that to what you're doing now, being an entrepreneur and working with other entrepreneurs and businesses?
Yeah, another great question. So after I left that role, I transitioned into operations management. So it was completely unrelated. The day job was now managing operations in the BPO sector, but I still loved copywriting, and I'd kind of moonlight, do some freelancing on Fiverr, take one-off clients here and there. But I'd say I took the plunge in 2018 when I was tired of that corporate gig, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go travel. #nomad life. Mm-hmm. So I went traveling full-time through Southeast Asia, and copywriting was how I paid my way. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I am so resisting digging into all this. I love Asia. I love traveling Asia. I'm going to resist digging into that. You and I will talk about that later.
Okay.
But now I want to ask you, so, when being a nomad, you knew that you had to generate the funds for your travels and what you were doing by your work. And so, and I imagine to do that, you had to have a list of followers, an email list of followers. How did you, when you first got started with all that, how did you create your email list?
So interestingly, when I started, I wasn't really using email at that time. Like back in 2018, I wasn't using email, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit. But back then, there were lots of referrals, and I was somewhat active on social. And so people would reach out that way. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't tapped into email just yet. It was I'd say about So in 2018, when I was traveling full-time, there was an agency that I was working with. And in that role, I got the opportunity to experience writing for all these different niches, industries, mediums, etc. And I found that I was really drawn to email. I loved email. And so when I did the Copy Hackers training with Joanna Weeb, she was like, it's it's a good idea to choose a specialty, whether you're going to niche or specialize, but choose a thing that you're known for. And it was through that exposure, I was like, okay, I like this email thing. I like how personal it is. I could dig into this. And that's how I found my way into email marketing specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you started building your list, how did you do it?
Social media.
Okay.
I'd say social media was the primary tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just sharing content, creating solid lead magnets.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, in the early stages, I had a travel blog and I was creating content that people are interested in the travel space. So whether it was guides or I'm Jamaican, I was born and raised in Jamaica. And so one of the things that was a big issue for my audience at the time was doing what I did on a Jamaican passport. And so my lead magnets were geared to that, which is something I think we'll dive into further, but just creating lead magnets that address pain points for your audience.
Yes.
Making them relevant. And so that's what I did in the early stages, and that helped to grow my list.
Mm-hmm. So with your clients, with who you work with now, and maybe with what you saw back then with some of those, what you were talking about, those lead magnets you were creating, what list building mistakes do you see entrepreneurs make?
I would say a common one, Leanne, and I know a lot like social media managers may not like to hear this, but using contests and giveaways that sometimes pull in the wrong people. So like you get lots of leads, but sometimes one of the challenges with that approach is you're pulling in people who are not interested in your offer. Mm-hmm. They're just in it for whatever you're giving away in the moment. And that tends to happen a lot in the e-com space, but I've seen it across the board. But just creating lead magnets that are not designed to qualify your leads. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say that's one of the biggest list building mistakes.
So you think people are they're not being careful and thoughtful when they're creating their lead magnets?
Intentional, yeah.
Intentional, that's a good word. I like that. Intentional, I'm writing that down. We should all be intentional.
Absolutely.
All that we do. Okay, so this online series is all about list building and engaging your list. Mm-hmm. So I do want to go back to the being intentional and the lead magnet in a second, but once they have a list of followers, right? And I guess this could relate back to that too. What mistakes are they making with that list? Of course, if it's the wrong list, then nothing they're going to do is going to be right. But what other mistakes are you seeing them make?
Not engaging, not sending emails, feeling like I might be annoying my audience, or I don't know what to say, I don't have anything to say, or I'm too busy.
Yes.
There's tons of excuses. And sometimes I fall prey to them myself, right? Mm-hmm. And as a business owner, there's so many moving pieces, so many different parts, and it's easy to neglect engaging with your list, especially if business is good and you have like a solid pipeline and you take for granted that it's right. But I think not engaging enough is a solid one for sure.
You bring up a good point there. It's like, you think I've got customers, I've got this, I don't really need to do anything. But it's like, I have another business. There's a friend of mine and I have a partnership. We flip houses. And right now we actually have like 6 houses on the book that we are working on. But one of them is on the market right now. Some of them are in rent, some of them we sell. And we have to keep looking for houses because it's like, we're going to get to the point. It's like, wait a minute, we don't have any houses to work on if we don't keep solidly bringing it in. And it's kind of the same thing with the email list.
It is. It's your pipeline, and you want to maintain that contact so that whenever you need an injection of revenue, right, you just send an email and
exactly. Now let me ask you this. Is there any wrong email to send, or are there emails that people are sending to their list that's like the wrong thing that they shouldn't send?
That's a great question. And what I will say on the surface, and I'll dig in further, but as with a lot of the advice that's going to be given throughout this series, like some of this, it's very subjective, some of it, and it does vary depending on your business. As far as wrong emails, depending on whether your product or service, I think if you're not aware of where your customer is in that life cycle, you could be sending them the wrong thing. And this is where segmentation comes in, and like having information on your list. Who's on your list? What are they looking for? How far into the buyer's journey are they? Are they just at that awareness stage? Are they ready to buy? Are they still curious, but not quite there yet? I think all those variables are things to consider, because if I've just joined your list, it's a high ticket item, I'm not quite there yet, and you pop me into a sales sequence where you're hard selling in 5 emails over 7 days, I'm not there yet, right? Gotcha. So that's wrong for me. Whereas somebody who's been on your list, they've been following your journey, they've purchased other items, and they're now ready to take the plunge to that high ticket offer, then it may make more sense for them. And, it's easier said than done, because some of this is nuanced, and you will need to have additional info on your audience to make those decisions around what to send, when, and to whom. But I think not being aware of where your customers or your prospects are in the journey and sending emails that don't match with where they are can ruin the experience.
Okay, that's a very good point. Now, what are some ways that people can get, like entrepreneurs can go about energizing and engaging their list?
If they haven't been emailing for a while, I always say start by acknowledging the elephant in the room. So if you've not, it's okay. We're human. We understand that businesses are run by humans. It's been a while, but I'm right. Your messaging can be along the lines of it's been a while, but here's what's going to happen going forward. Some people choose to just start sending without acknowledging the pause. That's fine too. It depends on the nature of your business, but I would say start with a re-engagement sequence if it's been a while. And that can look like sharing information on what you've been up to since you last emailed your list. So if you're writing content consistently, send a few emails. Here's what's new on the blog, or here's that new ebook we released, or here's that new video series, whatever you've been up to. That's a good way to get back into the swing of things and make people aware that you're still around and you're ready to engage them more consistently. Gotcha.
So now let's go back to that lead magnet. And I want to talk a little bit about being intentional and crafting that lead magnet. And guys, I always have a list of questions. And so I'm like, Anna's like, this is not on the list of questions. And I'm like, this is not on the list of questions. What am I asking her? But it's like, when I hear things, it's like, there's things I want to pull out. So how do you effectively, use copywriting and marketing, and I guess look at where you are and what you're doing? How do people effectively craft those lead magnets?
Okay, so for your lead magnet, there are a couple of questions that I think are critical. And I mentioned one before. What's the challenge that your prospect is struggling with that you can help them with through a lead magnet? That's one. Number two, that thing needs to be connected to the service or product that you're offering. Right. So there can't be a disconnect, because in some ways that lead magnet is a qualifier. When done effectively, your lead magnet is qualifying prospects, because you don't want a ton of people on your list who are not interested in your offer. So make it something that solves a problem, give them a quick win, make sure it's connected to your main offer, so that whatever communication comes after, there's that connection and they can see that. Because if there's a disconnect, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you'll get on a list, you'll download a lead magnet, and then you start getting emails and you're like, what is this? It's not connected at all. And so your expectation isn't met, there's disappointment, and your first reaction, if you're most people, is let me just get off this list because this is not what I signed up for.
Not what I want, yeah.
Right. So you want to make sure that there is that connection to your offer. And see, those are two of the key things to consider. If you're going the way of ebook, cheat sheet, workbook, any of those that involve copywriting, I recommend going for concise. I mean, there's room for lengthier ebooks, but I don't know that it's ideal for your lead magnet, because one of the things with the lead magnet is you want them to take action. And the reason for that is you want to give them a win so they connect you to that, like to a solution, right?
Yes.
You don't want to just be making it a lead magnet that's going to languish in the downloads folder on their desktop, right?
Exactly.
You want to make it actionable. So you want to make sure you're choosing something that gives them that win and that they can do it quick, because we're kind of in that area. Instant gratification is a big thing, right? But attention spans are diminished, and yeah. And so, yeah, I'd say make it something where they can get a quick win.
So you touched on that a little bit with the copywriting, like being really concise and being quick. And I love that. Now, so what are some other ways for entrepreneurs to approach copywriting in their business? Should they be trying it themselves? Should they be using AI? Should they be hiring a copywriter? When do they hire a copywriter? How can people effectively use copywriting?
I love this question.
Yeah.
I love this question. I'd say it depends, and I'll expound. So if you're in the earlier stages, maybe hiring and outsourcing is not yet feasible, depending on what your business looks like, and only the business owner can decide. If you're at the point where outsourcing is not an option, you can explore tools like AI, but the one thing I will say about those writing tools is you want to be crystal clear on your brand, tone, and voice, before you even go to those tools. Because if you head over there before you're clear on what your brand sounds like, what it represents, you're going to get confused. You're going to confuse your audience in the process, and it's going to be chaotic. A good approach to using those tools is having your topics or key ideas, key themes, plugging in, getting some info that you can then rework in the tone and voice of your brand, if you're going to use the tools at all. And I think that also holds true even if you're outsourcing, because as a copywriter, I do my best work when a client has a clear voice and tone guide, even if it doesn't exist. If they can answer my extended questionnaire that gives me that information, then it makes the writing process so much easier. So I'd say the number one key is being crystal clear on your tone and voice, like having that brand voice nailed effectively before you start thinking about writing. Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a good point. And I think I'm going to tie it back to what you said before, is like being intentional and really knowing what your brand is, who you serve, who your ideal client. And that's like foundational work that maybe you don't want to do it, but you really have to do it. Because like I know myself, sometimes, I've hired copywriters, sometimes I do it myself, but I know when I hire a copywriter, they give me a lot of questions. It's a lot of work to fill out that and flesh all that out for the copywriter. And you need to flesh it all out for your own writing too. So it's, again, you've got to be intentional and know exactly who your ideal client is, exactly how you help them, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. The one thing I'd add to that too, as we're talking about this, and it can sometimes be an underutilized resource, your customers, your existing customers, your existing audience. We call it voice of customer research in the copywriting space. But whether it's testimonials, whether it's frequently asked questions, the comments that you're getting on social media, the replies to your emails, reviews, whether on Google or wherever else, just collecting, that's a gold mine of resource. Like, what are your customers saying about your solution? If not your solution, what are they saying about somebody else's solution? What are they saying about the problem? What are the rebuttals? Like, I'm not quite ready. Why are they not ready? Those are some questions that if you're able to answer them sprinkling that into your copy is gold.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a great thing. So I think that you just kind of answered my next question in one way. It's like I was going to say, how can entrepreneurs get better at communicating with their ideal client? That is certainly one huge way right there.
Yes.
And I mean, and I'm pretty bad. I'm bad about remembering to do that. So, but it's like if we can remember to do that, it is, you know, speaking to them in their own language is such a good thing. And so
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing. Are there other ways that entrepreneurs can get better at communicating?
Well, before I dive into that, I do want to add, you said, because I know sometimes it's a challenge to do the actual research, and it does feel daunting.
Mm-hmm.
What I've found helpful and what I do recommend to clients is keeping a folder. So every time you get a testimonial, pop that in there. Every time there's a question, add it to that. And so when you're writing, you're not going to search for the info because you already have this repository of all these reviews, questions, testimonials, etc. So keeping a repository of that is super helpful.
I love it.
Yeah. As far as other ways to get better at communicating, beyond listening, I just feel like listening is the best one, the biggest one, right? Because it's dialogue in a way, it's conversation. And so you want to hear what they have to say, whether
Right.
it's in response to something you've said or just general convo. Trainings are helpful, like copywriting courses for business. If you're in the position to participate in some kind of copywriting training, I find those to be super helpful. Doesn't need to be an extensive course for copywriters. If you're a business owner and you just want to do it for yourself, finding a good course, I think, is a very helpful way. Another tip, and this is often shared in the copywriting space, is the rule of one. And the rule of one is essentially always write as if you're speaking to a single person.
Mm-hmm.
And that single person is your ideal customer. And if you've done your homework, you should have enough data to speak effectively to that single person.
Right.
So whether you're crafting a social media caption, an email, or any other asset, write like you're writing to that single person. Because what's interesting about that is the more specific we are in our copy is the more universal it is. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird inverse relationship, but the more specific you are is the more universal that is and more relatable. Yep. So yeah, that's one of my other favorite tips, the rule of one.
Always I love that. That's so good. Okay, I've got a question for you. So what superpower do you wish you had?
Oh, I'd say probably teleportation. I feel like I've thought this through. Being able to teleport.
It's kind of like, it's like even better than flying because you're there immediately. You know, it's like, forget flying. I just want to like hop there. It's like the Enterprise, like the transporter, like transport me somewhere or teleport me. Yeah.
Yeah. Travel hack. That would be my,
Well, that's it. Yeah. With the traveling, that would be a really good thing. I like that. I like teleportation. Now, what is the last thing that you saw that really surprised you or really shocked you? Could be anything, anywhere. So,
last thing that surprised or shocked me. So this was last week, and it's not super surprising, but it's what came to mind when you asked the question. It was my birthday. I was at the supermarket getting roses. And there were these really vibrant yellow roses that almost seemed neon. They were brighter than normal. And it was kind of delightful. I got them for myself.
Good. Mm-hmm.
But I know it wasn't just me, because when I got to the register, the cashier commented on the same thing. She was like, these are super bright. I've never seen them this bright before. I was like, oh, it's not just me.
They knew they were supposed to be there for your birthday. I love that.
That's it.
That's beautiful. I love that. So I think that you have a gift for the audience. Am I correct?
Yes, I do. And I'm excited about this one. It's my Engage and Convert lead magnet toolkit.
There we go. That lead magnet. There we go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you're, if they're serious and they're ready to get started with building their list, or maybe they started at some point, took a break, life happened, whatever the case may be, and they're ready to dive in. The Engage and Convert Lead Magnet Toolkit is a great resource, and it's a free resource.
Yes, we like those.
So I cover some of the things I already talked about here. So what are the elements to consider when you're choosing a lead magnet idea? I include resources for creating that lead magnet, and then suggestions for emails on the tail end of that, because you don't want to just build the list, right? We also want to engage. So we cover the welcome email when you're delivering the freebie. And now we talk about what are some emails you can send to your list after you've added those subscribers. And I actually walk through 10 different lead magnet examples and provide industry scenarios. So
that's going to be very useful. I'm going to take a look at that myself. That's very great.
Yeah.
So now let me ask you one final question. If you could leave entrepreneurs with one tip to reach their people, what would that be?
One tip. I'd probably reiterate the rule of one and being super intentional with that. It's kind of a cheat because it's kind of two, but
right.
I think being very intentional about every step of that process, because building your business, it takes time, and it's a journey.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that everything that you're doing is relevant to that end goal. So being super intentional, whether it's with that lead magnet, whether it's with your emails, newsletters, sales emails, whatever it may be, being super intentional and speaking to that one person always. Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. You know what, Anna, I have had such a good time talking to you today. I think this information is just going to be so useful to everybody. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. I was happy to share. I'm hoping they found value, but super excited.
No, I don't think we have to hope. I know that they found value.
Yeah.
And audience, like I said, I know that you enjoyed this just as much as I did. Make sure you stay tuned. We've got some more really fabulous Let's Ace Your List interviews coming up tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.